So for middle school, I went back to India and then came back to high school.
Good afternoon, everybody.
They don't see.
I don't usually introduce myself, but I'm
And they don't
going to
articulate.
say, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Amy Cossentino. I wear many hats at the university, but one of the hats that I so fondly wear is the community engagement hat. Looking around this room and seeing our students, the faculty, our staff, and our community partners, I mean, this is really what makes a difference in the community. Meeting those public goods, meeting those needs, when we come together to really listen to the needs of the community and to address those needs together so that ultimately we end up with a mutual benefit. I also want to thank our Carnegie consultant, Mr. Dick Kinsley. He's back there, he's chatting with some of our community partners, and I want to thank him for being with us. He's been on this journey, providing us with some guidance and input that will help us at Youngstown State University to be stronger in our practices and how we engage with the community. Also, I'd like to thank the team. We call it the Team Lightning. So the team members, if you would please indulge me and at least stand so that I can recognize you, because you put in so much effort. And I'd also like to quickly acknowledge two new team members to this group, which is Levi Smith and Jenna Binsley. And thank you very much. We just got the Drexel Institute for Leadership and Teamwork that is now also a part of this group. So I'm very, very grateful for all the work that you just dove in and said, okay, I'm going to do this along with you. Also, we have Dr. Abdu and Sherry here with us today. Dr. Abdu started this journey with us back in 2012 as we started the Pen Pal project. And so thank you very much for being here with us today. Really appreciate it. So I want to go ahead and turn this over to Dr. Fluker. She and her students have some good information to share, and again, very appreciative for our faculty for everything that you do. Thank you. I hope you enjoy your day here at Youngstown State University. Enjoy looking at the various exhibits and attending the sessions, and let's keep this partnership alive and growing as we continue on our road to the Carnegie. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As Amy said, I'm Dr. Fluker, and I'm very excited to present to you briefly a little bit of information about what one of our community engaged courses, Practicum in Historical Preservation, has been doing here at YSU. And I want to introduce some of the students in the course. This is half of us. We have Michael, Frey, and India. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the project and its background, and then I wanted to let them tell you a little bit about what they've been doing for this project. Also, we have sort of a little low-tech solution here. I made a quick little Google site that you can scan with your camera, pop it open and see a little bit about what we've been doing and have some sort of visual aids that go along with the project. So that's what that is on your tables. Okay, so as I said, I am teaching the Practicum in Historic Preservation course this semester at YSU. And about a year ago, the history program received some contact from the Youngstown Area Jewish Cemeteries Association. Their director, Art Einzig, reached out to the history program and said, we are looking for some help digitizing the records of our cemeteries in the Youngstown area. Basically what happened, the congregations in the area have been sort of consolidating. The cemeteries used to all be managed separately, and then a year ago in November, they decided to form a single cemetery board and try to consolidate all their records and manage those cemeteries as a unit. So there's 7 of them. There's 6 in Youngstown and 1 in Sharon. And so then Art, our contact, became the director dealing with all their records and figuring out how to consolidate them and make sure that they all had the same kinds of information and that they were able to preserve the historical records that they had, but then also maintain their records moving forward. So they were looking for some help with this, and they reached out to the history program. We saw this as a really great opportunity to collaborate and to plug this project, which had a real community need, into this particular course, the Practicum course. So the topic of this course changes each time it's offered. It's project-based, and its purpose is sort of twofold. The first purpose of the course is to provide our history students with hands-on, real-world work experience in what we call public history. So sort of museum, archival, library work. That's one of the major sectors that our graduates want to go into. So this course is designed to give them some skills in that regard. And then the second purpose of the course is to strengthen the connection between our campus and one of our most important community partners for the history program, the Youngstown Historical Center of Industry and Labor, our steel museum down on Wood Street. So that facility is managed in partnership with the history program. And so part of the goal of the course is to get students into that space, using their museum and archival collections and developing content for that museum that strengthens the museum's ties to the community and also increases community traffic into the museum. So that's sort of the purpose of the course, and again, this project seemed to be a really natural fit for its goals. So that said, I got to work organizing some goals for the course. I decided to structure this course as a digital humanities, with a digital humanities focus. So those were the particular skills I was hoping the students would be able to gain through their involvement in the course. In a nutshell, as we talked in the opening weeks of the class, digital humanities, this is an extremely broad field, but for our purposes, we were looking at digital humanities as a field that involves the application of digital tools and methodologies to facilitate humanities research, basically, in a nutshell. So I'm using digital tools and applying those things to all the things that humanities professionals do all the time: reading, research, publication, data collection, curation, exhibition, and more. The other really key advantage of doing this kind of digital humanities work, particularly as a historian, is that the goal is always to make stuff more publicly accessible. Make what we have in our collections available easily and accessibly to the public. And that was clearly something that the Youngstown Area Jewish Cemeteries Association wanted, not only to preserve and better organize their records, but make them searchable for researchers, family members, etc., who may want to know about individuals who are buried in any one of these 7 cemeteries. So we spent some course time on best practices in digital humanities work, as well as digital records preservation practices. And then we set about organizing this particular cemetery project. We first sort of looked at these 7 cemeteries and picked one that we felt would be manageable to work with in the course of a semester. So the students selected the Temple Emmanuel Cemetery, which is in Camel, if anyone's been by it. And we decided that, in consultation with Art, the director of the Cemeteries Association, that there were some specific goals then that we wanted to accomplish for this particular cemetery. First, to compose a brief history of the cemetery, to create a searchable online database of cemetery records, and then create a map interface that would allow researchers, family members, whoever, the general public, to go to a website, view a map of the cemetery, and be able to click through it and identify particular people who were buried there, basically as an interface to search these records. To do that, we also needed to photograph all the individual headstones in the cemetery. And then our last goal, this was really clearly important to the Jewish Cemeteries Association, to identify the veterans and the Holocaust survivors that were buried in each of these cemeteries. That's important to them because they like to be able to mark those graves in special ways, particularly for veterans, on Memorial Day, Veterans Day, particular occasions throughout the year. And then they'd like to also create some kind of permanent markers for each of the Holocaust survivors buried in those cemeteries.
So how many, you took pictures of every single headstone. How many?
Are 600?
630.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, so you can kind of see what those photos look like if you visit our little site there. And I should say, please ask questions. So that's all I want to say, though, in terms of background. I want to kind of turn things over to the students here to tell sort of their experiences as they're working on this project. So I wanted to ask Michael first to say a little bit about the archival research we did, fleshing out the database that is the backbone, I should say, of this project.
So we were kind enough to be supplied a spreadsheet from art in the YAJCA that had a list of all the names buried in each cemetery. Like Dr. Fluker said, we chose Temple Emmanuel. That had about 630 names. It only had the names, it didn't have any death dates, burial dates, or birth dates. So luckily the Steel Museum, along with the Public Library and a couple other entities, have a book that an individual in the 1990s put together that had, he went and did what we did. He took data off of all the tombstones at all the Jewish cemeteries in Oklahoma and compiled a book. We then used that book to flush out our database, put in all the death dates and birth dates if they were available. Then, after the photos were taken, we then went through every photo individually and added any missing information, be it father's name, mother's name, birth date, death date, burial date. And then, with the photos, we then took them, sorry, lost my train of thought. So after the photos were taken, we did all that with the data, uploaded it into the spreadsheet. We then put the spreadsheet into ArcGIS, which is a website building software, so that the software could then pull all that info and add it to a map, so you can click on any gravestone you want and it will tell you who it is, if there was information available for their birth date, death date, mother, father, like information, also Holocaust survivors or veterans. We did this all over the course of the whole semester. It was a lot of work, but we achieved a lot. We have every single gravestone has, any information on that gravestone has been put into this database, and it's now searchable. So.
I don't think so, but feel free to jump in, if there's anything you want to add. I wanted to ask Frey and India to speak to you a little bit next about the process of trying to identify Holocaust survivors that are buried, and they looked not just in Temple Emmanuel, but they looked for all 7 cemeteries, and definitely hit some roadblocks, but I don't know if you guys want to speak on any of them.
Yeah, so we actually got a list from Arthur, she mentioned earlier. He provided a list. We also were able to get some data from Find a Grave and kind of compile some of those names and birth dates, death dates, any partners and things like that, and fill in that information.
Yeah, so we filled in the information. In Temple Emmanuel, there were only 3 survivors. So since we're focusing on that cemetery, we did a little bit more research with those names. We were able to find an interview done with one of the survivors. So we're working on implementing that interview into our story map so that they can listen to those as well.
So yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that, so one of the really wonderful things that happened at YSU, in the late 70s, Dr. Saul Friedman, who was a member of the history faculty, interviewed Holocaust survivors throughout the area. And those interviews are housed here in MOG and then also at the Jewish Community Center. And they've digitized those interviews. And so this is part of the beauty of digital humanities work. We now have the ability to consolidate all of this stuff from all these different repositories for the public. So you don't have to go to the Steel Museum and find this book, and then go to the Jewish Center and listen to the interviewer. We're going to have it all in one place for people to look at. But I want to ask Frey to speak a little bit about these interviews, because it's old technology, and a part of the process of digital humanities is making sure this technology is updating and accessible to people as stuff improves. And so Frey's been kind of grappling with some of that for us.
Yeah, so I've been kind of editing some of the interviews a little bit because they were I think on cassette tapes. Some of them have dead space, dead audio. Some of them repeat a lot of the audio, so I just cut that out, I guess, and make them more listenable. Just basically, so you're hearing the interview at its, at its length, what you want to be listening to, and making it so that you're listening to their stories and not just whatever the background noise or anything else that's distracting. That's pretty much just what I think.
And then maybe the last thing, maybe Michael and Indy, you guys have been working on the story map. Maybe say a little bit about what a story map is, and then maybe say a little about the cemetery symbolism you've been putting together for the story map.
So a story map is basically a single page, like a website, a single page where you just scroll through and various information throughout the page will pop up as you scroll. I don't know if you've ever been to Apple's website, you know how when you scroll and it'll show you various products before you get to what that product actually is. That's kind of what a story map is. In this case, we just did Jewish cemetery information. And our story map starts with an overview of Temple Emmanuel, why we're doing it, and the history of Temple Emmanuel Cemetery. Then there's the map itself, which again, click on one of the 630 dots. It will tell you the information about that individual plus a photo of the individual's grave. Then there's all the Holocaust interviews, plus biographies of each Holocaust survivor. And then there are also second generation Holocaust interviews, so children of parents that had survived the Holocaust. There's interviews from them also, and how they experienced, how they grew up compared to how their parents grew up during the Holocaust. And then there's just our methodology, which was, again, acquiring all this data, filtering all the data to get all the important information that we would need, compiling it all together, and building the story map.
So another bit of research that I did was on cemetery symbolism. So one aspect of Jewish cemeteries is that on the headstones there are certain symbols inscribed that reflect the person buried. So the most common ones, for instance, are the menorah, which is commonly inscribed on the graves of women, and the Star of David, which is inscribed on the graves of men. Further, there's customary in which those visiting Jewish cemeteries, instead of leaving flowers, they will leave stones on the headstones. There's a few different reasons for that, dating back to ancient times, or simply just that stones last longer than flowers. So I chose pictures, examples of the photos we took. We implemented those into the story map as well, along with just descriptions of each symbol, why it's important.
And so our goal is to kind of basically have a very local sort of pocket history of this cemetery that connects it to the larger cultural context of Jewish cemeteries and Jewish sort of mourning rituals and customs, but then grounds it here in our local community and gives some voice to some of the people who are buried there through these testimonies and survival narratives, and then a whole world of information for researchers that's accessible to anybody ultimately online. So that's our project. Do you have any questions for us?
Are there plans to do the other 6?
Yeah, the Cemetery Association would certainly like to do that. This was the smallest cemetery, and it definitely was a semester's worth of work. So it'll be a while before we are ready to go with all 7. But
Yeah, we did start on one, implementing birthdays and death dates.
yeah, we started building the database for a second cemetery, but
Are you going to do it with other cemeteries?
we would be happy to anyone who reaches out to us. The Cemetery Association came to us to ask for the help. So yeah, any community member that was interested in having similar work done, we'd be happy to help.
How old was your Holocaust survivor?
Well, the interviews were done previously. Those were done a generation ago. She was.
Probably about 60. I want to say she was born in 1913.
Mhm.
Yeah. They're all in their later years when they gave these interviews in the 70s and 80s.
So you mentioned that you're adding the interviews and all of these other things to your story maps. Have you found any obituaries to go alongside them, or photographs of them, listed? Or?
So, specifically photographs, it is hard to come across photographs of some of these survivors and of the cemetery itself. With the obituaries, we took information from the obituaries and from what they gave in the interviews and just sort of a short biography of them. We didn't include any actual obituaries. We just kind of condensed the information because each interview is roughly an hour long. Plus, again, they cover their own life in the interview too. So the obituary would kind of be redundant considering between the interview and our biography it covers most of the information you would need.
We did a little hunting. The photographs was the kind of thing that surprised me more. We reached out to the Jewish Center Library, you guys went to the Public Library and Mahoning Valley Historical,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we tried as many sort of local repositories that we could think of to find photos and just didn't have luck. We're kind of hoping that, and I know this is what Art hopes, that once the website is up and gains sort of buy-in from the community, hopefully people will come to us and say, we have, you know, photos that we would love to include. And it becomes, you know, a real archive in that way.
Who's going to maintain it?
This is an excellent question, and that was definitely, this is a really important thing for, you know, for digital communities to consider, right? You build this, how long until it becomes outdated, who's going to be maintaining it? The plan is that, you know, we turn all this over to Art, and so that he can continue to use it for records management, because these are all, only one of them is no longer an active cemetery. So there's still burials ongoing. So they not only need this to be a historical way to preserve their records, but they need it to work for ongoing records management, which is required by the state of Ohio. But yes, this is an interesting question because we want, you know, it needs to live somewhere. So right now it's housed on YSU servers, which is where I think it'll stay for now. And then they'll be able to, the Jewish Community Center and the Jewish Cemeteries Association will be able to edit the database and update it. But yes, this is an excellent question, and one that any museum, you know, any library or archive that's engaging in this kind of work with the community has to figure out, right? How do we maintain access to this, and how do we keep it updated?
That is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much to Dr. Fluker and students for sharing your work with us. You know, Amy and I had started talking a little bit, and we're going to continue the conversation even outside of here about ways for us to collaborate. I'm looking at Melissa too, because they're representing the Youngstown Area Jewish Federation. You know, students in our freshman honors class, whose work you will see during the poster session later today, did a couple of projects, you know, along a similar line. We had a group of students transcribing Holocaust survivor stories on the website of the Youngstown Area Jewish Federation. We barely scratched the surface because there's so much and it takes so long. And as many of you know, transcribing here at the university, you know, is a story in and of itself, the great work that our students are doing, but it is labor intensive and tedious. And so that work can definitely continue. And maybe there's a way that we can work together and broaden, you know, to get other folks involved, you know, to really move that work forward, you know, in partnership with our community partner. So, you know, I would invite all of you to just have those conversations today. You know, you kind of never know who you're going to encounter, who's going to be sitting at the table with you, whether it's student, faculty member, you know, community partner. I want to thank, too, our community partners. I won't make you stand, maybe a quick wave, who are here today, who did partner on our campus community partnerships class. Anybody want to kind of wave? I know I'm looking at many of you. You know, we really appreciate your time, you know, investing in our students. You know, we have, for the last 2 years, done this project in such a way that we have reached out to all of you and said, what are your needs and how can we work with our students to meet those needs during the semester. Every year we get a little bit better at certain aspects. Every year there's always also going to be challenges, but that's also an opportunity. So to everyone in this room, whether you're a returning partner, a new partner, a not yet partner on that particular project, which again our spring honors class, you know, I would invite you to consider, you know, reaching out, grabbing me in the hallway, thinking about, you know, partnering in the future. We also want to start earlier every year. Elizabeth keeps reminding me that I keep saying that, but you know, like many of you who want to be involved in co-creating what that experience looks like, maybe here to campus in, you know, early fall semester. You know, let's just keep starting a little bit earlier every year, you know, as we get better, you know, in doing this work together. So. I guess quickly, just a little bit of logistics. I think many of you have a copy of our program for the rest of the symposium today. We are just about at 1 o'clock, so we have a little bit of time, you know, to allow you to, you know, grab a little bit more of a snack, make your way to Kilcawley Center, which is probably just about a 5-minute walk from here. But in your program, you can kind of see what your options are for the next few hours with us. At 1:30, the first oral session for presentations will begin. There is an option for a professional development track, and you don't have to follow the full track. You can certainly pick and choose and go to the sessions you wish, regardless of what you may have signed up for. That was just to give us an idea for planning. But the first session is actually with our Carnegie consultant, Mr. Dick Kinsley, who's going to be talking a lot about what community engagement is and some different models and ways to think about that. The follow-up professional development session at 2:30 is with Elizabeth and Andrea, who will be kind of walking you through Grants 101 and Social Media 101, all in kind of one session. So that's the professional development track itself. However, many of you around the room are also going to be presenting your work, your research, your scholarship in concurrent sessions. So as much as we'd like you to be able to do it all, we'll have to make some tough choices. So again, at 1:30 there are, I think, 3 different choices. There's a professional development, a track A and a track B, and you can take a moment to read those options. And then at 2:30, we actually go all the way to track C. There's a dedicated session with Dr. Sherry Harper Woods and her colleagues about their community engagement in Rwanda. That has a lot to do with exploring some additional opportunities for study abroad and engagement abroad. And so I can't mention them all. There's so much more in there, and I'm looking at all of you and so excited to hear as much of your work as possible today. I guess we'll culminate then with our poster / idea exchange / reception and awards at the end of the day. The posters are already up though in Kilcawley Center, so if you're strolling through, feel free to take an early look. But we will have the students there to bring the work to life at 3:30, and we'll have some more refreshments at that time. And then at 4:30, we have an awards presentation that we're really excited about. A couple special presentations to Avi is receiving one of those awards. I think I can say it now. We're close enough to the official announcement. But you have to stick around 4:30 for the real deal. And then a special award for our student transcribers and Julie Senefani, who couldn't be at this lunch, presented from the Library of Congress. They're not here, but they have sent some artifacts so that we can celebrate the work that our students are doing for our national community partner remotely. And then we'll wrap the whole thing up at 5 o'clock. So we have a fun and full, exciting day planned. Any questions? Anything that I've left out? Anything that anybody wants to just kind of throw out, while we have a few minutes still together?